Hello, my friends. I'm Minister Judy, founder and co-spiritual director of InSpiritTruthCenter here in Atlanta, Georgia. I'd like to welcome those of you that have been here before back. And for those of you that are visiting for the first time, welcome to InSpirit TV. InSpirit TV was created so that you can have an inside look at our Celebrate Your Life service right here in Atlanta, Georgia. So come on in, take a look, and we'll come back and talk in a minute.
The biggest obstacles that we find in pursuing our goals and in keeping our resolutions are ourselves. It's the baggage that we're carrying around with us that relates to our past, that we seem to keep carrying with us, and it goes from year to year to year. And that baggage pops up at the worst possible time, that it comes up just at the time that it looks like that we're ready to make it through. Sometimes that baggage is so severe that it feels like what they call battling demons. And you know what that's like. It's those tormenting thoughts and feelings that we have, things that come from like deep down in our gut that affect us and that torment us. It's those things that come up out of our past like drug addiction, foreclosures, bankruptcy, things that have this heavy emotional charge for us that we need to find a way to deal with. So the thing that I want to look at this morning is that you're coming up to 2013 and you've got a choice. You can decide on the one hand to continue as you've been doing if you've been battling demons and to continue to battle those demons, or you can wrestle with angels. When we battle with demons, we're working with what's going on out there in the world. But when we wrestle with angels, we work on with what's going on inside of us.
Well, Reverend Terry Thompson, one of the ministers here at InSpiritTruthCenter, is right back on it. I want to ask you a quick question, and then we'll go back to Terry. What are you battling with? Are you battling with a fear? Are you battling with an addiction? Are you battling with past pains? Terry is really breaking down that you're battling with demons when you should be wrestling with angels. Check it out, and we'll wrap it up in a minute.
So this morning we're going to be looking at two different scriptures. I'm going to start out talking about battling with demons, and we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 12, verses 43 through 45. And I'm going to be reading from the Lamb's Aramaic translation. When an unclean spirit goes out of a man, it travels in places where there is no water, and it seeks rest and does not find it. I will return to my own house from whence I came. So it comes back and finds it empty, warm, and well furnished. Then it goes away and brings with it 7 other spirits worse than itself. And they enter and live in him. And in the end, that man becomes worse than at first. Such will happen with this evil generation. Scripture talks about an unclean spirit. Now, an unclean spirit, when they talk about it in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, very often they're talking about demons. Now, many of you are probably raised up in other religious traditions where a demon is some sort of entity outside of ourselves that comes in and takes possession of us and makes us do evil, horrible, nasty things. It makes us do things that we wouldn't otherwise do. Now, new thought, we don't believe that there's any other entity because we believe that there's only one presence and power in this universe. But sometimes we have within our consciousness hurts. We have feelings. We have things that we have not dealt with that make it seem as if we're possessed by something other than God. It's when we turn to something other than God to look for solace, to look for relief, that we can say that we're battling demons. And sometimes those things that are tormenting us is our lack of follow-through on our divine purpose. And those gifts, those skills start to torment us until we do something about it. We'll find ourselves in situations where things seem that they should be going correctly, but somehow or another it gets messed up because Spirit is trying to bring into our lives something to turn us around. Now, in the scripture, it tells us that there are places that this unclean spirit has traveled to where there's no water. And in some translations, they use the word desert, but I like this description, no water. First of all, water is life. Water also represents purification, and it represents spirit, the Spirit of God. So this unclean spirit is going out seeking rest out in the world where there's no water. So that tells you right off the bat that this spirit is not looking to be cleaned up, but wants to continue along the lines of what it's been doing. It's going out in the world looking for solace, looking for rest. And we very often find ourselves going outside of ourselves, going out into the world, looking for something that's going to bring us relief. And we're so busy recognizing everything outside of us that we don't take the time to take care of the things that we need to do. So we're out so busy looking around that at some point we get past our comfort zone. And what do? We remember that there's a dry, warm place that we can go back to. And we bring that spirit back in with us. And we let that spirit run us and keep us doing the same thing over and over again. But now we've got an even bigger problem. Because we have neglected so much of what it is that we have to do. When that unclean spirit comes back to us, it comes back to us and it brings 7 of its buddies along with it. And in the end, we find ourselves worse off than we were when we began. In spirit, battling demons does not work. It only makes things worse. The answers to your problems and the challenges that you face are not out here in the world. Because when you go out this way, you're not looking to purify yourself and to relieve yourself spiritually of what it is that's bothering you. You're looking for something that's going to give you relief, that temporary pleasure that makes you feel good for right now. And because you're looking outside yourself, you go out and you do the same thing over and over again. Our next scripture we're going to find in Genesis chapter 33, verses 24 through 28. And it reads, "And Jacob was left alone, and there a man wrestled with him until daybreak. And when the man saw that he did not prevail against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And the man said to him, 'Let me go, for the day is breaking.' And he said, 'I will not let you go unless you bless me.' And he said to him, 'What is your name?' And he said, 'Jacob.' And he said to him, 'Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, Prince of God, for you have proved your strength, wrestling with an angel and with man, and have prevailed.' And Jacob asked him and said, 'Tell me your name.' And he said, 'Why is it that you ask my name?' And the angel blessed him there. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for he said, 'I have seen an angel face to face, and my life is preserved.' The sun rose upon him just as he left Peniel, and he limped because of his thigh." When we look at this scripture, there's another thing that you need to understand. There are those who feel that this was a literal event. Me personally, I believe that it was a vision. And one of the ways that you can tell this, particularly when you read the New Testament, is that you've got a story going along a certain way, and all of a sudden it takes an abrupt change. Because when you look at what's going on before this, Jacob has all these people around him. They leave him, and all of a sudden, there's this man here that he's wrestling with. And when you have that abrupt change like that, that is a clue to you, a signal that there is something spiritual, that there is a vision going on, and that you shouldn't think that it's something that's literally happening. So he's wrestling with this man, and when we take a look at wrestling, it's something where we have to get up close and personal. It's something where we have to struggle. We're not running away when we wrestle, we're trying to meet it head on. And that's what Jacob is doing. He is dealing with this problem head on. This man represents Jacob's fears. It represents the consciousness that we put into the material things that we can see around us. He's wrestling with it to try to immobilize his fear. And at some point, he starts to get an inkling of what's possible if he continues to exercise his faith, if he continues to move forward in faith, and to know that the promises that God has made to him will be fulfilled. And just like with any problem where our ego is involved, at some point it will try to make us give up. And what the problem does, it says that it touched him in the hollow of his thigh and knocked his thigh out of joint. And sometimes it's like that when you're dealing with the issues that are facing you. Sometimes those issues are so severe that they knock your feet right out from up under you. And when that happens, you've got to hold on even tighter and say, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Instead of him going out looking for solutions elsewhere, he turned inside. And then he takes this problem and he puts that Jacob thing of shifting and shift it from being a problem to being a blessing. So we're told that the man says to him, "What is your name?" And Jacob says, "My name is Jacob." And he says to him, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but rather your name will be Israel, which means Prince of God. And right here, we see the biggest difference between wrestling with an angel and battling demons. The name was very important because the name shows our nature, and it's how we define our consciousness. And when Jacob got a new name, he got a new consciousness that let him move forward past his problems. The key for us when we're trying to overcome problems is not to try to throw it away out there, but to find a way to shift our consciousness where we substitute one thing for the other. And that's what happened with Jacob. Now, once Jacob had a chance to take a look at this and understand what it is that had happened to him, he realized that he had come face to face with God. And he did what they very often do, that he gave the physical place a name. Peniel, face of God. When you come into your Christhood, when you come into your Christ consciousness, you come face to face with the presence and the power of God that dwells in you. And when you do that, your life is preserved. Not the life that you've been trying to live, that you want to leave behind you, but that life that helps you to move forward, to recognize the good that you seek, to express all of the gifts that you have. And sometimes, after you've gone through the things that you have to go through, your life will never be the same. There will be things that you'll go through that you have that little bit of a limp, which is just a little bit of a reminder of what it is that you left behind, but that you know that you'll be able to move forward and be blessed. So what happened here? Jacob has gone through the spiritual experience, and he goes on and meets his brother Esau. He gets there with the 400 men in Esau, gets off of his horse, and bows to him 7 times. Now, this is a completely different person than the one that tried to steal the inheritance and the blessing. He comes back to him humble and says, "My Lord, I'm your servant. Tell me your bidding." And Esau doesn't want to have any bit of it. He tries to pick him up and say, "Brother, I've missed you." And they both kiss one another and cry on each other's shoulders. And Jacob says something very profound, that he created in his mind an image of his brother Esau. And that's who it was that he was wrestling with all that time. In spirit, the lesson that we learned from Jacob is the proper use of our imaginations. We spend our days imagining very often the worst about what life can bring to us. We go over these things over and over and over again in our minds and in our imaginations. But when we learn to come into our full Christhood, we take that imagination and we use it positively. We use it to imagine what our lives can and should be. We use it to imagine how we can overcome the challenges that we have. How are we going to harness the power of our imaginations so that we can imagine the life that we want, that we can imagine the skills that we have, the talents, the abilities, and putting them into use the way that God intended for us to use them. So InSpirit family, as 2013 opens up, I ask you, are you going to battle with demons or are you going to wrestle with angels? The choice is up to you.
In that metaphysical lesson that Terry just gave us, he was telling us about how Jacob faced his challenges and was wrestling with an angel so that he can become Israel. I'm going to tell you right now, hiding and running from your problems is never going to solve anything. You're going to have to face your problems straight up, head on, wrestle with them, get close and personal with them so you can overcome that and be what God created you to be, the Israel, the Prince of Peace. That's what God created you to be. Not just Jacob into Israel, but you can be called Israel as well. I'm Minister Jehudi for InSpirit TV, thanking you for joining us and can't wait until the next time we get together right here on InSpirit TV. Peace and blessings.